Greetings, peace of the interwebs, Jake here, and just got done watching Solo, a Star Wars story. So I guess going into this movie, I had kind of low. I don't necessarily want to say low expectations, but kind of hampered expectations just because of all the behind-the-scenes drama with this movie. With Lord and Miller being the original directors, the ones who did 21, 22 Jump Street, and the Lego Movie, all fantastic films that I really enjoyed. So I was actually really excited when they were first announced as the directors. Then, of course, the head of Lucasfilms, Kathleen Kennedy, fired him. Kind of last minute, they only had like 3 weeks left of principal photography left. I don't know why they let him get to that point before firing him, but anyways, for various reasons. I don't know the exact reason, because it seems like, depending on which article you read, there's a different reason. But anyways, they were fired, Ron Howard was brought in to finish the movie, and there were a lot of rewrites, reshoots. So, that being said, I think with all the behind-the-scenes drama, and the last-minute addition of Ron Howard and a lot of the recast, because again, there were even characters who were in the original script, and I guess an original cut of the movie, or not final cut, but the original version of the movie before it was reshot. So they had to bring in other actors, like Paul Bettany was actually brought in to, I guess, fill the role of, I think the actor Michael Kenneth Williams, I believe is his name. I'm not sure if it was the same role or something different, but anyways. So, I guess, with all that, going into this movie, I was kind of like, alright, I'm not expecting anything great. And I think that's probably the best way to go about, the right mindset to go about in, watching this movie. Because if you're expecting, like, this great addition to the Star Wars universe and franchise, I think you're going to be a little let down. But if you just go in, I guess with, like, little to no expectations and just kind of, you just go in for the fun ride of this movie, I think you'll leave the theater, maybe not. You're probably not going to be blown away, but I think you'll at least leave and be like, okay, yeah, that was a fun ride. I don't regret seeing this movie. It's by no means great. It's not awful. So, and that's really the way I feel about this movie. It's, by no means like like a great or bad movie, and it's just very, very safe. Which, again, I don't know if that's a byproduct of all the reshoots and rewrites. If they were like, we don't have a whole lot of time, let's just do a safe movie. Or if maybe that was in the original script to just kind of tell a very safe story. And, I don't know. So I guess, like, on one hand, I can kind of understand, especially because I would like to think that the reason why this movie just felt so very safe, like, there weren't really any risks taken. It's just a very, again, middle-of-the-road kind of summer blockbuster popcorn film. Just set in the Star Wars universe. So, again, I can totally understand why Lucasfilms wouldn't have just played it safe rather than try to, rework the script some more. But honestly, I feel like if they are going to reshoot and, do a lot of additions to this film, they should have pushed it back to at least December of this year. So that would give them a little bit more time to kind of tweak some things, or just kind of push the movie back maybe even a little bit further until like early 2019. But I don't know. I guess I just feel like, given the opportunity to, because again, basically over half this movie is reshot. So I feel like doing that amount of reshoots and rewrites and all that stuff, why not like take full advantage of that and, I don't know, I guess try to do something a little bit more ambitious or a little bit different. So, but I don't know. That's just kind of, I guess, some nitpicks. But really, overall, like, again, this movie, I don't really have any glaring issues with the film. There are definitely some really great Star Wars moments. I loved a lot of the banter and chemistry between Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo and Chewbacca. I thought a lot of their scenes really worked. I thought their chemistry was really good. So I liked a lot of their scenes together, their back and forth. Donald Glover was really good as Lando Calrissian. Again, everybody was good in the movie. There's no like bad acting or anything like that. But really, the film was kind of like just a series of like adventures and events. There wasn't really, I don't know, like, and I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know, like it just, and I imagine that's kind of a byproduct of the reshoots is like it felt more like just a series of events within this film rather than like a clear cut, I don't know, like direct story that they were following. I'm not sure if that makes a whole lot of sense now that I'm saying that. I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, really, I didn't have a whole lot of glaring issues with the film, but I don't have a whole lot of like praise either. Like I wasn't like all they're blown away really by a whole lot of scenes. But again, there's still like some solid scenes though that definitely kind of elevated this movie and really made it enjoyable. But ultimately, this movie just kind of amounts as just it's a fun ride. Like it's a fun, just kind of summer popcorn blockbuster movie. But like later on this year, when I compile my top 10 list, it's not even gonna be anywhere in my top 10, more than likely, unless for whatever reason the rest of the year just really tanks with movies. So I mean, is it a great addition to the Star Wars franchise? Not particularly. It's also not a blemish, though. It's by no means a blemish on the franchise to where people will look back at this movie and be like, oh man, if only that movie wasn't made, the Star Wars franchise would be so much better. So I think it at least has that going for it. But then again, at the same time, if the movie's just okay, and I imagine that's how a lot of people are going to feel about this movie, most people are just going to be like, yeah, okay, it was fine. That's also not exactly the best thing either when, people are kind of like, oh, what's your favorite Star Wars movie? And they start listing off, the classics like Empire Strikes Back. Or, in my opinion, Rogue One, I think, is one of the best Star Wars movies. And then people will be like, yeah, Han Solo is, kind of, people will probably say it's better than the prequels. They'll probably put it, above those three. But I'd say that's probably where it's going to land for most people is probably in between the prequels, original trilogy, and, I don't know, probably below the newer movies, depending on who you ask. But ultimately, I'd just say it's, just a very middle-of-the-road movie. But that being said, I think it's at least worth seeing in theaters. So, if you're going into this movie, or if you're kind of wanting to know what to go see, I think it's definitely worth a watch. Not necessarily worth, or not necessarily like a must see movie opening weekend. I think it's a movie you can probably wait, a few more days, like go see it in a matinee or something like that. But again, I'm going to go into a little bit of a spoiler here, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, I don't know, maybe fast forward a few minutes or just come back to this review. But there's a certain scene, though, with Emilia Clarke's character towards the end of the movie where she's interacting with a certain character. And here's where it gets spoilers, so stop it now. If you haven't seen the movie, stop the recording now and come back later. Where basically she's interacting with through hologram with Darth Maul. Now that scene really piqued my interest, because I don't know if Kira, who's Emilia Clarke's character, is like already a pre-existing character that showed up in, say, like the comic books or maybe some of the novels, or maybe even during the Clone Wars or Rebels TV series, where Darth Maul has been very active, in the Star Wars universe after Phantom Menace. So that actually really piqued my interest, and I am curious to see maybe if that, their relationship is explored further, maybe in like a upcoming comic or a book or something like that, or if it's something that was already pre-existing and I've been out of the loop. But as far as I know, this is like a new, like a totally new thing. So there are moments like this where I'm kind of like, oh, okay, you've piqued my interest. I want to know more. But ultimately, they're just a few scenes here and there, where I'm kind of like, oh, okay, this is cool. I'm not, I'm not opposed to seeing more adventures. I don't know. Yeah. I guess the more that I think about it, even though this movie is, again, just totally fine, nothing outstanding about it or anything like that. At the same time, though, I guess I'm not entirely opposed to maybe seeing another, like, or maybe not movie, but like I wouldn't be opposed to seeing like the further adventures of Han Solo and Chewie leading up to Force Awakens and like some of the Star Wars comics. And I think that's maybe part of the reason. One thing with this movie is I think maybe the story in this movie would have been better as like a comic or a novel, more so than a standalone movie. And maybe it actually would have been like, I don't know, they could have fleshed some things out more. Obviously, they wouldn't have had the whole behind the scenes drama with the directors and all that stuff. So I think that's kind of ultimately where I find myself with this film is I think this would have been better served as, again, a novel or a comic book, like a limited run series on Han Solo and the early adventures or whatever they wanted to call it, more so than a film. And also, again, with the whole Star Wars franchise, is what I was really hoping they would do with these standalone films is not tell stories on characters that we already know and are familiar with. And they would focus more on just completely brand new, like new characters, new settings and locations. Because at least with Rogue One, like it was still like a bit of familiarity because it tied into the Death Star and tied in directly to A New Hope. But it was still brand new characters, new, like a lot of new material. I think that was kind of the best mix of both worlds, where you throw in something familiar, but you also add something new. And I thought it was a fairly risky movie, a bold decision, and it worked. I love Rogue One a whole lot. So I think going forward, maybe Solo will be a lesson for Lucasfilms to kind of be like, well, maybe we shouldn't focus on the characters we already know and are familiar with, but just expand further on new characters, new parts of the universe, because the Star Wars universe is vast and massive. There's so much, source material out there that you can mine for. So that's what I'd really like to see more of in the Star Wars franchise, especially these one-off movies, more so than like an Obi-Wan movie or a Boba Fett movie. Now, that being said, will I go see these movies? Sure, because I'm a Star Wars fan. But I just think that for me personally, I don't need, I didn't need a Han Solo movie. I don't necessarily need the Obi-Wan movie that's been in rumor of, happening for the last couple of years, or the Boba Fett movie. I don't necessarily need those films. So, I don't know. I guess that's more or less where I stand with this movie. Wasn't clamoring for it, but it's fun. So I don't think it's gonna really affect the Star Wars franchise all that much. I don't think it's gonna be near as divisive as The Last Jedi, because again, I think most people just kind of look at Han Solo and be like, yeah, it was okay, and that's probably about it. There'll be a minority of people who probably hate the movie, and some people who love it. But most people, I think, will just be like, yeah, it's fun, it's okay, it's decent. So, I don't know, that's kind of rambled a little bit, but that's more or less my review on Solo: A Star Wars Story. So if you've seen the movie, let me know what you think. And what do you think they should do with this? Like, do you have a particular, I don't know, what would you do if you had the director's seat for a Star Wars film? Like, what would be the story you would tell? I'm curious to see what you all think. So that wraps this up. Hopefully you all have enjoyed. And until next time, everyone, cheers.